Well, I am so excited. Sewing is one of my favorite passions. I do a lot of different crafts, but sewing is just the hearing a sewing machine hum makes my heart hum. So I love to sew and I love to teach people to sew. Sewing zippers is something that I think a lot of people are like, oh, I couldn't do a zipper. Zippers are so easy, especially once you do a few, 5 or 6, and you're like, you're a pro. You won't even hesitate to do a zipper again. So I think the zipper bags is a great place to start if you're a beginner or if you're an experienced seamstress and you just haven't sewn before. The zipper pouch is a great way to create something, and using it as a pouch for all of your electronics cords and everything like that, or your electronics themselves, really makes it easy. And you can gift them to people. So if you make, 5 or 6 of them as you're learning, you can gift them to other people and then mix and match on what other hobbies you do have. So like if you have a digital cutter and you want to cut out a label for your zipper pouch, you can do that. If you have an embroidery machine, you can always embroider on your pouch. This was an upcycled denim. So, you can always, if you're looking for things to do to upcycle, the zipper pouches are a great technique. Let's go over the supplies you'll need for this workshop. If you're sewing along with me, it may be a little bit hard if you're a beginner sewer. So just know that this class is being recorded and it will be up on YouTube. I'm not exactly sure when, but it will be up on YouTube. So just know that if you miss a step or your machine isn't working as smoothly as you'd like, it's okay. Take a pause, watch the rest of this workshop, and then you can always do the steps, pause the recorded video, and ask questions as we're moving along. So if you're a beginner, please don't hesitate to ask me questions. So I have my Singer sewing machine along with my regular foot and a zipper foot. The zipper foot is narrow, and each machine will have its own looking zipper foot, but it's basically narrow and it has like a little notch cut out on each side. What that does is it allows you to sew right along your zipper without having the foot go over the zipper. So you'll want to have your sewing machine with a zipper foot, fabric to match, thread in your upper thread and your bobbin to match with your fabric. You can use really any type of thread. I just use Coats and Clark, I think is the brand. Just the cotton thread is great for me. You'll want to have some fabric, and I have a variety of fabrics we'll talk about. A zipper. I'm using a 9-inch zipper. So I'll talk to you about how to cut your pouch for whatever size zipper you have. You'll want to have some straight pins. You know what, Felicia, why don't we go to the overhead? Because I think I'll have a little bit more visual with that. So you want to make sure you have either straight pins or wonder clips like this. You'll have 2 fabrics. One fabric will be your outside fabric and one fabric will be your lining fabric. You can, if you picked up some cute little fat quarters, I don't even think these are fat quarters. But these are from Michael's little quarters, or if you're really jazzed about the new fabric in the store and you had some fabric cut, you'll want to have a lining fabric and your outer fabric. And then your zipper. And if you're using a 9-inch zipper is what I'm using, but if you have a longer zipper, you can always trim your zipper shorter. So don't hesitate if it's the perfect color and they don't have it in the size you want. Go ahead and get the bigger size and you can always trim it down. You want to have your fabric scissors. So, everyone has, if you are a crafter, you have those scissors that nobody else in the family can use. I'll also show you how to use a rotary trimmer. You'll want to have some type of ruler. I have my ruler here. It's not in my picture, but I have my ruler that I'll measure out with. And I do have a seam guide along with, these are some extra tools I just kind of usually have on hand. My turner, a seam ripper, our best friend here, and then my sewing gauge there, which tells me my size that I'm working on. So to get started, what we're going to do is cut out our fabric first. This is what we're making, a finished pouch that is lined on the inside and you have your fabric on the outside. So this is what we're gonna make. Now I've already kind of cut out a pattern here. If you make a lot of pouches, it's easier. I always find it easy to have a little pattern to work with. So you can create a pattern with cardstock if you want, or you can just measure it out as you go. I have it marked where the zipper goes as a reminder if my fabric is a one-way directional fabric. So my zipper is a 9-inch zipper and my pattern here is 10 inches. So I have a little bit of extra room on the edge. That gives me my seam allowance. Now, if you're working with fabric that is directional, like this material here, the pattern has a direction to it. I'll go ahead and open this one up. Our pattern here has a little bit of a direction to it. So you want to make sure that when you're cutting this out, you're cutting it out to the direction of your fabric. So if you're cutting it, of course, you'll want to go ahead and iron it flat so you don't have any of the wrinkles in it. And then place your pattern on your fabric so that the design is facing the right way. So if my zipper's here, my bag will stay upright. So this pattern, this material here has a pattern on it. So I want to keep my pattern upright on both sides. So I want to make sure that on both sides, my material will go up. So by that, I mean, if you happen to take your material and fold it in half like this, and then trim out your design, your back mason jars would be upside down. So be aware of where your pattern is and how it's going to land on your fabric so you can cut your fabric to the right size. I'm not going to cut this because I didn't iron it out, but that's a really good sample. Now I have my steps done because everything I have stepped out because sometimes when I'm talking it through, I might make a mistake. So I have everything stepped out. So I'll be using this fabric to actually sew today, but we'll go ahead and cut with this fabric. I like to use a rotary cutter because it allows me to cut through multiple layers at one time. So if I just take my fabric and we'll put the selvage edge along the side here, and I have a nice even side on the bottom. If my side here was not even, I could always trim it down to make it even. If you like to, you can always turn your fabric so that it is the wrong side facing in before you're cutting. That way, if you've drawn out like your little pattern like I have here, I can just take my fabric, line my pattern up with the selvage edge here. The selvage edge is the edge that has either, it'll have like a white edge like this, or it will have the little fringe. So you can line your pattern up with the selvage edge there and then go ahead and cut out, or line it up with the fold. Let's get this all straight out. So if I were to line this up with my fold, I could take my material and we'll fold it like this. So I have a nice easy fold there to follow along with. And I'm not wasting too much fabric if I want to follow along with the fold. Okay. So just get your fabric nice and pressed out. You want to have a nice smooth surface to work with. And go ahead and put your pattern piece down. You can put the edge right up against your fold, and that will help make sure that your design comes out nice and flat. So if this is my design here, I can line it up with the fold or the selvage. Now you can, if you want to, draw this out with a marking pen, draw out your pattern with a marking pen, or just dive right in and give it a cut. So this I'm just cutting with my scissors and no marking, living on the edge. So we have that, and you would just cut out the whole piece. If you want to use a rotary trimmer and a ruler, just take your straight ruler line it up with the edge of your pattern and your rotary blade, and then you just slice that right along there. And that gives you a really nice clean line. And like I mentioned, you can cut through multiple layers with your rotary blade, and it allows you to just get a nice, nice clean edge there to work with. Okay, so my pattern I'm cutting out here is 10 inches by 7 inches. And this can change however, big you want it to be. If you want to make a little short pouch or a longer pouch, like if you want to make a little pencil pouch, you may just make it shorter and have a different zipper. So you can change your pattern up however you want your material to be, and however your pattern your material will stand up for you. Let's see. So I would turn this inside out and cut it again. Now, if you are working along with me, if there's anybody working along with me, would you just give me a shout out if you're doing it? So that would be great. My zipper pouch that I'm making, I'm using a 9-inch zipper, and so it's 10 inches by 11 inches. And again, like I said, you can change the size if you want. This is also a really sweet gift to make for somebody. If somebody is, I don't know why I turned that over. If you have somebody who is getting married, you can make a little pouch and make it out of somebody's, a grandfather's shirt or husband's favorite t-shirts, something like that. This is a really cute thing to make for a bridal party. And if you're new to zippers, it'll give you lots of experience cutting out your zippers and putting them together. So we're going to go ahead and get this cut out. 10 inches by 11 inches. And like I said, I'm going to be using that French fabric, but we're going to get this one cut out so we all kind of have our pieces cut out. Sometimes the cutting out always takes me the longest part of doing a pattern. And then we'll just turn this like this, and we'll cut this one. Okay, so once your pattern pieces are cut out, the next step is to do a zipper sandwich. And what we're going to be doing is putting our zipper on our fabric to add the zipper to your project. So grab your lining fabric, whichever one is your lining fabric, and we're going to put your lining fabric face up on the on your work surface. So this is what we're going to be doing. Is you'll have your two linings. You'll have your lining and your top material, lining material, and we're going to place it on each side of the zipper. First, we'll do one side and we'll come back and do the second side. So to do that, first side, grab your first piece of fabric, your lining, and put it face up on your work surface. Yes, both pieces are 10 by 7 inches. So both of your lining and your front fabric, you want it to be 10 inches by 7 inches. 10 inches by 7 inches. If you're using a 9-inch zipper. If you're using a longer zipper or shorter zipper, then you want to just change it. I always make it just so your package will tell you what size your zipper is, and I just add an inch on the edge. That way I have enough for my seam allowance. Okay, so put your lining fabric face up, and then place your zipper over it, and go ahead and open your zipper up so that your zipper is right on the edge there. And it's okay if you have a little bit of extra zipper on the edge. So if your zipper is longer and it goes over, that's acceptable, because let's grab this one. This is actually, I think this is the one I want to use. Here we go. This is a shorter one. I don't know how that one got in here. Your longer zipper like this, you'll have some extending over. So I guess I said this is 10 inches. Am I wrong? No, that's 10 inches. And my zipper is 9 inches. So your zipper itself should be 9. This should be a 9-inch zipper. Right? doing something wrong? I'm going to open up the new 9-inch zipper and make sure we're all on the same page here. Okay, so my 9-inch zipper is a little bit shorter. So I did have the wrong zipper here. Here we go. All right, so my 9-inch zipper is going to go right on like that. And I'll have my zipper a little bit extra on each side where your zipper is. If you have a longer zipper, that's perfectly okay. It can hang over the edge a little bit. We can clip this off so you won't have to worry about that when you sew it. So if you have a longer zipper, just put your metal bracket pieces over the edge of your seam. If you have a 9-inch zipper, you'll have that little 1/2 inch on each side. Okay, so to make your first sandwich, you're going to go ahead and put your lining fabric down face up with your zipper on. And I usually start with my zipper opening on the left side, on my left side, going to my right, and take your fabric. Now, my fabric does have a right side and an up and down. So I want to make sure that my words are facing the right way. And I'm just going to turn that over right on top of my lining fabric there. So we're just going to make that little sandwich there. Go ahead and line it up and use your clips or your pins and place about 3 clips along the top. And you want to go ahead and start if your iron is not preheated, go ahead and preheat your iron. If you don't have an iron handy and you're sewing with me, you can finger press. The iron just makes your creases a little bit better. Okay, so we're just going to sew this together like that. And if you peek inside, you'll see that you have your zipper, your liner, and your outside fabric. Now, if you are starting to sew at the top here, go ahead and open your zipper down. Before you sew, we're going to open the zipper so that where we start, the zipper itself, the zipper attachment, won't get in the way of our stitches, okay? So let's go ahead on over to our sewing machine. I put a camera angle there, so if you guys need to, we can let me know what you're seeing if you need to see more. There isn't a printout of the pattern, it's just a rectangle. So it's just 10 inches by 7 inches will be your pattern piece. Okay, so I have my zipper foot here and my regular foot is on my machine. I'm going to go ahead and release my regular foot and I'll attach my zipper foot. Now, this zipper foot has 2 sides to it. So I have to choose which side I'm going to put onto the foot. So I'll put my left foot on and just snap it in place. So now it's right there. Now you'll notice I have this little extra piece of material with all these threads here. If your bobbin thread tends to nest on the back of your material, one is you want to check and make sure that your bobbin is placed in your machine properly. So usually when I put my bobbin in, I put it in like a P. So the string comes down and it forms like a lowercase p. I guess it could be an uppercase P too. So you go ahead and pop that in and that should help. That's one way that it will help. But if for some reason you still get that nesting on the back of your fabric, you can start your stitching with a little scrap fabric. So what I like to do is I'll take my scrap fabric and just stitch, just a little bit of inches on that, just that corner there. Okay, put it around. Okay. So we'll just stitch this and you don't take it off or anything. You just go ahead and stitch that down and then you push that to the back. Now, when you start, your bobbin thread won't give you that nesting effect. So here's I'm going to pull this back so you guys can see. When I sew, we'll keep our sandwich going. But what this does, having your zipper foot, it allows your needle to really get close to your fabric, so you can really see what you're doing. Let me pull this up just a little bit more and tilt it. Maybe that'll. Okay, so the teeth of your zipper will be outside of your zipper foot. You want to have your zipper open. And if you want to, you can stitch forward and backward. You don't have to, but if you want to, that's like a habit of yours, go ahead and do that. That's a good habit to have. And then just start stitching, and you'll feel the teeth of your zipper will go right along the edge of that foot. And we're just going to stitch until we get about where the zipper head is. So my zipper head is right here. I'm going to stitch down just a little bit more. There we go. Okay. I'm going to stitch down just a little bit more. And then what you want to do is sink your needle into your fabric. So I'm sinking my needle down. I'm going to lift the foot up so I can move my material around. And I'm going to sneak my hand under here and move the zipper head. So let's see if I can show you. You can sneak your hand under here and just move that zipper head up. You don't want to have your needle outside of your fabric when you do that. You want that needle down in your fabric and everything held together. And then we're just going to finish off that stitching. And you'll come all the way to the end of your fabric. Okay, so then I just snip my threads and I'll snip my little starter piece off, and I'll just go ahead and start stitching on that again so it's ready to go when I come back over. All right, now we'll go back over to the overhead if we could, and we'll do some ironing.
Hey, Kinsley, there was a question asking about the zipper foot, if you could have shown a close-up of it.
Oh, sure. Yes, absolutely. So I'm using my little easy press here on the third setting. You can use your steam iron, whatever works for you. I like that one because it's little and it doesn't take up so much room. But so now you see that zipper is inside our bag there, and our wrong sides of our fabric are facing, and our right sides of our fabric are facing out. Okay, so when that happens, then we're just going to take your iron and press right along that seam. Now, if for some reason, and this happens, you really are learning how to do along the edge of your zipper foot, and you maybe it goes a little crooked, use this as an opportunity to take your fabric and give yourself a clean line. So you can clean that up. We're going to do a top stitch on this. So if anything is not to your desired liking, if you're like, oh, it looks a little crooked, this is the opportunity with your iron. You can kind of fudge that a little bit and fix it. Now we're going to take our second lining piece and make sure you've got like a nice flat piece. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. You want to make sure when you do this that your materials match up. So I'm going to put wrong side to wrong side, create that zipper sandwich, and then put my right side on top. Open your zipper again, same technique, and we'll take our fabric and turn it over like that so that I have wrong sides facing, because what we're doing is we're getting our material to this point here where you have your two front pieces on either side of your zipper and your two back pieces on either side of your zipper. Okay, so we'll just make that sandwich again, and we'll take it right back over to our machine and sew it up. Open up your zipper a bit so that we can adjust that as we go along. Also, I will just say one other thing. You can always fix your sides. So if you're off a little bit here, don't panic. We can fix that. But if you have a moment, take your lining and line your lining up on the sides. Okay, and if it doesn't line up perfect for whatever reason, don't worry about it. We'll just cut that down the edge and make it nice and clean. So we'll just match that up there. Again, you can use your Wonder Clips or your pins, whichever you like to use. I kind of like the Wonder Clips because when my kids were sewing, when I was teaching them to sew, they liked the clips. So sometimes they would clip for me, and then as they started making their own projects, they knew how to use the clips. So plus you don't end up with pins on the ground. We will use some pins a little bit later, but you don't have to. Whatever, again, it's whatever works for you. My grandmother would have loved these clips, but they didn't have them when she sewed. Okay, so see, now double check. Make sure your patterns are going the right way on each side, and your lining pieces are lined up to, have the right lining pieces lined up. And then we're just going to go back over to that machine, our sewing machine, that machine, and we'll sew this up. So if we'll go back over there and we'll line this up. Now I have my extra pieces already sewn in and I'm ready to go. And I'll basically do the same thing and changing out where my zipper is. So my zipper is down here. So once I get to about where that pink clip is, I'll sink my needle and move my zipper. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here. Move that out of the way, and you can kind of feel like where your zipper is. So I know my material is going to go to the edge of my foot there, and I'm just going to let it go there. If you get like stopped because there's a little piece of your zipper there, sink your needle, lift up your foot, and just adjust if you need to. Oops, got a little aggressive there. So as I'm going along, I can feel, here's my foot. So I'm going to sink my needle, lift up my presser foot, come under here, and take your zipper head there, and we're just going to slide that down. Past your, it's easier if I do it sideways, but you guys don't get to see it as well. I'm just going to slide that right down. There we go. And you don't have to be too aggressive with it. It will come apart. One thing here is I will then hold my zipper together at the bottom here, so there's not like a big gap, because you want to keep that same tension there and location of where you were sewing. Okay, there we go. And then again, we're going to take this off. I have that little piece. I sew with a lot of different machines, and my older machines are really the ones that do that nesting for me when I sew. We still will need our zipper foot. This is what the zipper foot looks like for this machine. You see, it's got those two notches. And what the notch there, that's where the needle is going to go down into the foot. If I had my regular foot, this part here would be going over the zipper and it would be wonky. So you want to use that zipper foot that is narrow and would have those two notches on there for you. And then I'm just going to attach that back in there because otherwise I will forget. Okay, so now let's head back over to our iron and we're just going to iron this open. And you want to make sure that your two front-facing fabrics are facing and your two lining fabrics are facing. And that's it. That you have sewn your zipper. That's all you need to do. So if you're doing this, if you want to make a shirt and you want to put a zipper in the front of a shirt, it's the same technique. It's the same way. You just take those two pieces of fabric with the lining. If you're using a lining, if you're not using a lining, you can just sew that right on into there. I think when I first started sewing zippers and really thinking about them, I thought you would have to like fold back your fabric and then stitch on one side and stitch on the other side. But you just do that little sandwich and you're good to go, just like that. Now we'll do a top stitch on the top of our bag. And the top stitch is just for decoration. It also, it is for decoration. You can't see it there, but here, this is the back side of my top stitch. And what this does is over time with your zipper, it will prevent your fabric from getting caught in your zipper by holding it back. So you can see how close I get to the edge, the folded edge there with that top stitch. Now, one thing to point out with my top stitch, typically when you do a top stitch, you want your thread stitch to be a little bit longer. So if we'll go back over to the machine, everybody's ready. Let's go back over here and I will show you on this machine. This is a 2.4 and I'm just going to go increase the depth of my stitch. So I'm just going to take this up to, it's total personal preference. I'm just going to pop it up to a 3.4 stitch. And that will just make my stitch go a little bit longer. So when I put it onto the stitch, this is a little bit trickier. On this, I can't zoom in. When I position it on here, see, there we go. Okay. I'm just going to put my folded edge here where my seam is almost right to the edge of my foot and stitch like that. Because I like my top stitch to be close to my folded edge. But again, total personal preference, how you like it to be. Okay, so I'm just going to put that in there. I've already got my piece back and we're going to stitch it in here. Somebody was asking about an embroidery machine. If you want to let me know what kind of machine you have, I can try and answer your question. Oh, I forgot. I need to open up my zipper head so that's not in the way. Okay, so we're just going to do that top stitch. And we'll do the same thing when we get to the zipper head. We'll sink the needle, lift the presser foot, slide your zipper up, and then come back. If you're just learning how to sew and you're not feeling comfortable with the pressure on the foot pedal, you're like, I don't know if I should put more or less. If you're not feeling it, what I recommend doing is doing it barefoot. Take your shoes off and do it barefoot. And you'll really get a better sense for how the pedal feels. But it's like driving. So you want to, whoops, sorry guys. My pedal's right here. The amount of pressure you put on your foot, on your pedal is the same as like when you drive. You just want to be consistent. So don't worry about going, super fast or I think it's easier to go at a steady pace, whether that's a faster pace or a slower pace. Now I may get caught up a little bit on my zipper right there. So see how it buckles there? I'm just going to lift up my foot and clean that right out of the way. And there we go. Now I'm back in business. So we're doing great. Again, I'm coming to my zipper head. I'm going to stop, sink my zipper, lift up that foot, open this up all the way. There we go. And then come on back and finish that up. All right, so there we go. Look at that. Now, this is what I always forget. You want to bring your stitch back down to a normal everyday stitch. This one lets me know if I'm at the right stitch because it'll say 2.4. So I know I'm at the right stitch. This icon here is my stitch length. This is my stitch width. So if I were using like the zigzag stitch, that would give me the length of my zigzag. Just everybody's machine is going to be a little bit different, but you will have your stitch length for a straight stitch and a stitch length for a zigzag. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to put my little piece of fabric there, and then we'll go back over to the ironing board. Again, back over to that overhead if you could, Felicia. Okay, so here we are back over here, and we've got our top stitch done. Now the next step we're going to do is matching up our sides. So this is where we're going to take it here. We're going to start to assemble the pouch. So this is what we're going to end up with, okay? Right, looking like that. And the way we're going to do that is you'll go ahead and leave your zipper open, because when we turn it through, you have to go through. All right, I'm going to show you like a couple steps ahead. But what we're going to do is we're going to match our front and our back together, leave a gap in the lining, and you're going to need to bring your hand into your pouch and through the zipper. So I have my little openings over here. I've got to come all the way in, and you want to be able to reach all the way through your pouch. So at this stage, it is super, super important that you remember to leave that gap and leave it big enough for your hand to go through. If you do not do that, it's a real struggle to get your zipper open. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. This is also where you will want to clean up any edges. If you have like big gaps along the sides, you'll want to go ahead and clean up those edges now and make everything match up. We will be matching the fronts together, and all of our seams will be pushing to the lining. So if you take your two front pieces and you hold those together, we're going to match up the ends of our front, and go ahead and put your clips in there. So we're going to just clip those right on in. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing on the sides and this and the lining part of it. But when I say you want your seams to go to the back, you're going to push the back, the zipper and all this material towards your lining. So you want to have just the clean part of your zipper towards the front of your bag and everything else towards your lining. So we'll just pin that there. And again, if you are more comfortable with a lot of pins, by all means, put extra pins in. If you're okay with just 2 pins, just do 2. I usually will line mine up as I go along. So I don't do too much. I just kind of will adjust as I go along. But on this side here, you definitely want to make sure that you have a pin and your zipper is towards the front, but all that gunk, all that seam stuff is towards your lining. So you'll see like you want to just kind of get under there and make sure you've got that clipped so that it will go that way. Okay, and then you line up your sides again and just keep, pinning around the edge. If you have a little bit of material that if it doesn't line up perfectly, you can kind of come in and give it a little tug to make sure that it lines up as best as you can get it to go. But don't, like I say, don't stress about it, Now on the lining side of it, if it's a big gap, like if it's like really crazy crooked, just take your ruler, draw a straight line and trim it so that you have a straight line to work from. This is the side we're going to leave that opening to get our hand in. So you need to have an opening there that's big enough for your fingers to go in. So if you hold your hand there, you'll see, how far you need to go to leave your opening. This is where you might want to grab your pins or some other form of marking. If you have a marking pen and your fabric is white, you can certainly mark your fabric then. So let me get my sleeve out of the way here. I'm going to put my hand there and I'm going to put 2 pins to mark where I need to leave my opening. And I try and center it, but it doesn't have to be. Don't stress about it. I think sewing is so much fun if you don't stress about it. If you just kind of go like, well, I'm going to make a mistake. And I always kind of think, I always laugh if somebody were to look at my sewing and be like, oh, Kesley, you didn't do that right because whatever they thought I didn't do right. I would be like, why are you looking at my seams? I just made you something. Enjoy it. These are also really, these zipper pouches are really fun to make for, to put gifts in. So if you're making, if at the holidays or something like that, it's a fun thing to do. Grab that holiday fabric and you can do something with that. Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to go back to our sewing machine and we're just going to start at one of our openings. We'll do a back stitch, stitch all the way around and come back here and stitch here. If you're worried about the bulk on the side here for stitching over that, I find sometimes it's easier to go from like this direction and bring yourself down over that seam as opposed to going this direction. So if you wanted to start here, you could start in the middle and go around, stop here, come back up here, go around the middle and stop here. But it's really up to you whatever your preference is. So just double check number one, that you have your zipper open. You will, I know I've done it before, forgotten that, and double check that on both sides, your extra material is facing the lining and we're ready to go. So we'll come right on back to our machine. And I want to double check. I've changed my setting from the top stitch to a regular. And I'll put my material under my needle here. Now for this one, we're going to use a 5/8 inch seam. So you want to find on the plate where your 5/8 inch seam is. My 5/8 inch seam is right here. Whoops, oh, shoot, sorry guys. Oh my goodness. Sorry, you guys are getting taken for a spin here. Thank you, Felicia. Ooh. All right, let me get this right back on here. Felicia saved the day. Thank you so much. Okay, oh, I got to turn it around. There we are. Nope, I don't want that. I want that. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that, guys. Let me move my pedals. That's what my undoing is. Okay, so I'll be using the 5/8 inch seam marker, which is right here. If you have a hard time seeing your seam marker, there are metal like magnet pieces you can get to put on here. You can also put a little slip of tape on it to mark your 5/8 inch seam. But I'm able to use the guide. But I know for a while when I was using a new machine, I always kind of struggled with that a little bit. Also, we want to switch out our foot. We don't need our zipper foot. We just need our regular everyday foot. So let's switch that out. Pop that under there. Oops, I think I'm gonna have trouble with that. Okay. There we go. No, I'm backwards. I was wondering what was going on there. Okay, now I'm hooked in. All right, and I'm just gonna put my thread back under. I'm ready to go. Okay, so I've got my marking. I know where I want to start, and I'm gonna measure my 5/8 inch over. You can do whatever whatever depth of your seam allowance you'd like to do. If you're like, Kesley, I'm more comfortable with 3/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch, you can absolutely adjust that. The other thing I would do is when we get to this corner, we're going to sink our needle and flip our material and go down the side here. So I like to take my sewing gauge and I kind of mark where that 5/8 inch is. As you stitch and sew, you'll get comfortable with where on your guide it is. So that's just a little trick I use. Okay, let's get sewing. So we're going to come right down to the corner. And when my needle hits that line I just drew, I'm going to sink my needle, lift up and turn. And I'm just going to check and make sure that I'm still at that 5/8 inch mark. If I'm a little bit too far or not far enough, I can just come back in and do an extra little stitch or two and bring myself right there. Now I'm going to stitch all the way to the seam here. I will stop right before. And I'll tell you why I'm going to do that. So let's just get right to that point. Okay. So I have a lot of material to get through here. I have the zipper and the 4 different layers of fabric. So I really want to make sure that it goes smooth. So I'm just going to put my fingers on either side of my material outside of my presser foot and just watch it and make sure it goes under. If I need to, I'll give it a little push and make sure it catches, or come from the back and give it a little pull. So when you're going over that thick material, you may have to be a little persuasive to get the material to do what you want it to do. And that's just a little gentle nudge of saying, hey, let's get there. And we'll mark our 5/8 inch seam here. So we know when we get to here, with 5/8 inch of a seam. I'm watching that, and I'm going to sink my needle, put my foot up, and go straight again. And I'll mark the end of this one too at that 5/8 inch seam. And Felicia's been putting in the chat a link to the step-by-step directions for this pattern. So, you know, make sure you grab that. And it's just, the pattern itself is just that rectangle. Your zipper size plus an inch, so a 9-inch zipper plus an inch. And then, so I did a 9-inch zipper, my rectangle was 10 inches. And then, however deep you want your bag to be. I think 7 inches was a good ratio for me. 8 inches is good too, depending on what you're putting in it. Like if you're going to make these pouches and put extension cords in it, you may even want it bigger. But if you're just doing, you know, your phone cords and stuff like that, you can go a bit smaller. Okay, so you'll see it'll go easier on this side as we go. Oops, I said it would. Let's give it a little persuasion there and just gently bring it up and over. If you're nervous about that, you can always go back and forth on it a little bit and make sure it's good. Now, before we sew it up, do double check that your zipper is open. You've got that gap, because again, if it's not, you can get in there, but it's no real treat to make that happen. Let's do our 5/8 inch right there. I'm going to sink it right when I get to that spot. And we're going to rotate it. And I meant to grab some patterns too. Simplicity at Michael's has some really cute bag patterns. If you guys, you know, want to branch out and make a few other bag patterns, they really had some cute designs. And they were just putting out new fabric at my Michael's the other day. Didn't have time to stay and see what they were putting out, but I think there's some cute little spring things coming out. And if you wanted to, like, you could really, just a thought, I'm going to reverse on here. I should have reversed on the other side. I'm sorry. I should have reversed right here. That just reinforces it. So it's a little bit easier to turn, and you don't worry about tearing your fabric. But what I was going to say is, like, if you wanted to make this a little bunny rabbit, you could cut out some ears and add some ears to the bag, either on the side seam, and then use heat transfer vinyl to make a little bunny nose if you celebrate. Okay, sorry, I bumped that again. All right, let's come back over to the overhead one. Okay, so now what we're going to do is turn this inside out. So we're going to end up with something like this. Before we do that, I want to show you, we're going to pull it out through that hole we have in our lining. So you'll have a little hole there in the lining. If we give our material a little bit of an extra press right now, it will make it a bit easier when we turn it. So if you want to give your material a press, we're going to give it a press, and we're also going to cut at an angle on the corners. This reduces the amount of fabric on each corner, so it helps you turn your material a little easier, and it just helps you get nice sharp corners. If you want to, you can just give everything a nice little press here. This is where you could trim your zipper. So if your zipper was a big zipper, like if you had an 11-inch zipper and your pouch is measuring 9 inches, this is where you would trim your zipper and cut that down if you needed to. I'm just gonna, I like to kind of press my seams here. It kind of helps it when I turn it inside out. Now, a question I always get when I sew is, do you iron your, do you wash your material before you sew with it? And I have to say it sort of depends on what I'm making. If I'm making something like this, I usually don't. I usually would just go ahead and sew away with it and not worry about ironing. Fabric does tend to have like a little stiffener in it. So if I were sewing with this for somebody to wear or making a blanket or something like that, I would then definitely give it a wash before I make with it, just so it has a nice feel to it. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to make a zipper shirt or make a hoodie or something like that, you may want to wash your material before sewing it if you're making a garment. I think the most aggressive thing I ever made, I had in college, I had to make a wool suit, and I had to do a lot of hand sewing on it, but that was the most like aggressive thing I made. I do a lot of costumes, and that helps. Now, we did talk about using your fabric scissors. I also have an old pair of chunky scissors. So when I am trimming something like a zipper that has metal on it, I don't want to use my fabric scissors because you don't want to nick your blades. I will use these old chunky schoolroom scissors to do that. And yes, this is the Cricut Easy Press Mini, and it is available at Michael's. And it's great when you're doing little projects like this and you don't have to have like steam or anything like that. It's great. Okay, digging your hand into your design now, and we're just going to start at one corner and bring it through the lining. And you're just going to bunch everything through. And then take your lining back out to the front of it. Now, this is where this little tool comes in. This is called a bone folder. It's great if you make cards. If you ever need to score anything, the bone folder is great. They used to make them literally out of bone, whale bone. And I wore mine down, but that was great. Now I just have a wooden one, which still works great. So let's get those corners, really talk to them and be like, you want to come out and be flat and be nice and sharp. Let's go over to the next corner, talk to it and say, you really want to come out nice and sharp and get that corner. This is your one chance to get those corners nice and sharp. So you want to take advantage of that before you sew up the inside seam. Now, if you're making this for yourself, you may be like, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to do any more. If you're gifting this, this is where you need to do that final press. So get those corners as nice and sharp as you can. Grab your little iron and give it a good press. Push your steam. If you have a steam iron that you're using, go ahead and give that steam a nice little push. Okay, and we'll go in our corners here. Kind of go through the lining to get to my outer fabric and get into those corners. So you really want to push that out. If you find that you have too much fabric there, oops, I got a little aggressive. If you find you have too much fabric and it's too bulky, you can trim that down at this point too. You can just go back in and trim that back down. We'll do our sides. Let's do the same thing on the other side here. And go ahead and get that nice and opened up. So Amy, Ashley, I'm not familiar with that machine. I say I use a lot of different machines. I use Bernina's and Brothers and Singer machines. And then you want to do the same thing on your lining. So we can go ahead and open up our pouch all the way. And we want to do our lining and do the same thing. So get those corners nice and sharp. We'll get our corner here nice and sharp. And the last step is to close up our piece, our lining piece. Now, if you want to, you can use a hem tape and do a little hem tape on this seam and close it up that way, or you can bring it back over to your machine and stitch this bottom closed with your sewing machine. I may grab some hem tape so I can show you guys how to do that. So if you're going to sew it, you just close that and you stitch it there. But I have white thread in my machine and I don't necessarily want my bottom to be white thread there. So if I'm gifting this to somebody, I would change out my thread so my thread would match. So I'd pick a nice blue thread. And that's also with your top stitch, something to think about is like you could do a different color top stitch thread, maybe like a glitter thread or something like that when you get to that point. That's always a fun way to do it. And again, like I said, if you're using this for your different types of cords, you could put vinyl on it for your cord. If you wanted to, with your finished pouch here, you could have put a little buttonhole here so the cord could come out. You could sew a tag into the side seam if you wanted to do something like that. Okay, let's just I'm just going to do my thread here and I'll trim these off. Pull that up like that. Okay. So to close my seam, again, if I had the same color thread in my machine, I could just stitch a little blue thread right there and it would be closed. Since I don't have blue thread in my machine, I just have the white thread. I'm going to use this hem tape and it's iron-on hem tape. It's heat and bond. This is iron-on adhesive and it's just hem tape. So if you're ever in a pinch and you need to hem something, this is great. You just put it in and we're just going to iron it and it will seal this shut. So I'm just lining it up with this top edge here. And we're just going to seal it shut. You really only have one chance to do this because once you seal it, it's sealed. So make sure everything is nice and smooth and you're all the way to the edge for doing the hem tape here. Okay. Let me get all the way there. So I want to make sure I don't see it on the other side. And then you just take your iron and follow your package instructions. I think it's just a hot iron. A little press there will do wonders for it. And something fun to consider as that's pressing, I have these little charms that I keep with my zippers so that if I'm making something for somebody as a gift, I can always add a little charm to it. Okay, I'm gonna let that cool for a minute and I'll show you how to add, I think I need like a little French design here. So I can just add this one. Usually I would use my jewelry pliers and I don't think I'm going to be able to get that one. This one's got a bigger ring on it. So let me grab this ring. Open that up. And we'll put this one on the other ring. I don't think my little smiley face is the appropriate look for this fabric. I need something, fancy. So we'll just put that on there and then take your zipper and pull that on there. That's your zipper pull. And these are just little charms that I pick up along the way in the bead aisle, if you're like, oh, those are cute. You can just get seasonal ones, and then you just add a bigger jump ring on there. Once this is cool, double check that it is sealed. So we'll just kind of give it a little pull apart. Oh, look at that. Nice and sealed. See? I could give it a little more heat right there. Have you ever used a stiffener fabric between the lining and outside fabric? You could, I'm like, are you thinking like an interfacing, like a stiff interfacing? You could absolutely do that. If you wanted to do something like that, I might do like an iron-on interfacing, or I would consider doing an iron-on interfacing, or even like if you do a fusible poly, that'll give you like a quilted look. You can give yourself a little quilted look on there. But yeah, you can do stiffeners. Let me see if I have. I had this little bag that I made that it's in the other room. Okay, I'm not going to go get it, but I did use a stiffener, like it's like it's a liner, but it is a stiffener one. And you can use that to make these. You know what? I feel like I need to go get that. So yeah, if you don't have the hem tape, you can absolutely just stitch that right up. I'm going to run and get that thing so you can see. But yeah, if you don't have hem tape, you can just stitch that with your sewing machine. It's in the liner, so nobody will see it. But you can also hand stitch it. So if you don't want to have like a seam at the bottom of your bag, you could just hand stitch it, and that will do the same, give you the same kind of results if you wanted to. I'm coming back. I didn't leave for long. I have my craft space here, and then I have another room that's a guest room that kind of has some of my spillover in it. So I have to just run across the hall. So I made this little cuff. This was a Michael's class that we did, and it was how to, recycle jeans. And so I took the leg of a jean and boxed the corners of it. And then now I have this little tote, and this like sits up because it's got a firm liner in it. So something like this, which is fusible on one side and it's pretty firm. You could do that, or even like felt, if you wanted to put felt inside, if you wanted it to be firmer and stick up. Now, one other thing too, I will point out, and sorry, Felicia, I have so much information. I can never keep it within an hour. So this bag here, I box the corners, so my bag will actually has a base on it, and it will sit up. And before we finish, I'll show you that from the front angle. But it basically will sit up and hold its form there. So you could box the corners. To do that, and we do have another class on that on the Michael's YouTube channel. So all you have to do is cut a corner in each piece of it. So you'll do it in the lining and your front facing fabric, and then open it up and stitch across that opening. So you open it up and you stitch right across there, so that when you, let me see if this is closed on the bottom. Sometimes I don't always close them. Yeah, that one's closed. But you'll stitch that bottom into a box, and it's called a box. So you just basically stitch across that bottom by cutting out a box, lining up your seams, and stitching across your seams. And if you go on the Michael's YouTube channel, I don't remember when we did this, but it is on there. But you just basically would go like that, open up your seam, and stitch right across there. And then when you open it up, that's what gives you that boxed bottom versus the flat bottom. Okay, so if you want to go to the front camera, I can just show that real quick as a finished product. So this one here has the box bottoms, and you want to do that to both the liner and your outside fabric, so you get that flat surface on it like that. And then same, this one was kind of boxed on the bottom with that stronger liner in it. So this will sit up on my table like that. And that just sits up, and this will sit up too. So get out those old fabrics. Like, instead of putting something in Goodwill, maybe you could make a little container for it or a pouch for it. The zippers are so fun and so easy. And once you kind of like master that, you can do the same type of zipper technique and give yourself like a zipper that opens on the side like this. So instead of having a 10-inch by 7-inch, you just would cut one piece into like a 1-inch and 8 inches, or whatever your depth is. So lots of fun ways to use zippers. Great ways. This has a little tag on the side. I just put like a little fold over elastic in there, so I could put a little loop on there if I wanted to. You can decorate it with embroidery. You can stencil on it. All kinds of fun things you can do with the bag. But getting that zipper in there is definitely fun, and this is a great project to learn how to do a zipper. Look at me having trouble here.
And
There we
Cassie,
go.
I did add the 5 denim upcycling projects link in the chat.
What was that one called?
5 denim upcycling projects for beginner sewists.
How do we do that many? But yeah, I know this was one of them, this little bag using the cuff, and I think we talked about this. But lots of fun ideas. Check out the Michael's YouTube channel. There's lots of sewing projects there if you're just getting started. I know Simplicity has a couple of videos up that are really helpful. And I can't wait to see what you make. So be sure, if you make something, you share it on your social media, tag Michael's, because they want to see what you're creating. All right, guys, did you get all the questions?
I think so. The only thing, I'm not for sure if you actually showed the zipper foot, but I think all the other questions were answered.
Okay, and I did show the zipper foot, but if you are curious as to what a zipper foot looks like, on the step-by-step document, I do have 2 pictures of a zipper foot on there. So if you go to that Canva link, you can see what that looks like. Awesome. Thank you, Felicia.
You're welcome. Everyone have a great rest of the week.
Enjoy.